Hi, I'm Tom Brookshire.
And I'm Pat Summerall. In last week's show, we talked about how the high scores that we had been expecting earlier finally started to happen. Once again this week, in half the games, the winning team scored 30 or more points.
A lot of points. It looks as though the rule changes are starting to put more touchdowns on the board. I've noticed what seems to be another interesting and refreshing trend this year. Along with more touchdowns, more enthusiasm, spirit, and certainly emotion by those newer winning teams.
How do you account for that?
Well, maybe the coaches are telling the outman team that if they don't play over their heads, they're going to get drubbed by a Miami or somebody. But it's really fun to see it when they're, explode on the field like that.
There are teams like St. Louis and Buffalo and New England. Maybe it's just they're not used to winning.
Well, I don't know. Dallas had a lot of emotion in playing Philadelphia last week in a winning
game. I guess they really did. It's good to see, though.
It's great. It's always good in pro ball.
We'll be right back with This Week in the NFL after this message.
The St. Louis Cardinals are the NFL's only undefeated team with 6 straight victories. They remain the leaders of the NFC Eastern Division by 2 games. But last Sunday against the Houston Oilers, they had their hands full, containing Dan Pastorini's surprisingly explosive offense.
The Oilerettes have been about the most exciting aspect of Oiler football in recent years. That is, until the St. Louis Cardinals came to the Astrodome last Sunday and put their fireworks offense on review. When number 35, Jim Otis, launched himself into the Oiler end zone, it was 7-0, and early in the first quarter. But a mismatch it wasn't, as Dan Pastorini countered with a lightning bolt to Mike Montgomery. Number 22, Roger Worley, prevented a touchdown, but on the next play he learned he had only postponed the inevitable, as Montgomery scored to make it Oilers 10, Cardinals 7. In the second quarter, the Cardinals came up with a Houston fumble, and Jim Hart capitalized with a strike to number 82, Earl Thomas, that put St. Louis ahead 14-10. On the following series, the Cardinal Team D literally came through again as number 74, Council Rudolph, with the crunch on Dante, and number 75, Bob Rowe, got the offense the ball again. It was Jim Hart's show once more, and after looking everybody over, he threw again to Earl Thomas, and suddenly it was Cards 21, Houston 10. In 92 seconds, St. Louis had scored twice, but the Oilers came back with a field goal after Mike Montgomery dropped a badly needed 6-pointer. Toward the end of the third quarter, the Cardinals put together a drive that would play a determining role in the game's outcome. Number 35, Jim Otis, got it started. Jim Hart then spotlighted number 21, Terry Metcalf, whose versatility and running genius has played a major role in St. Louis' rise to sudden glory this season. When the quarter changed, Hart pitched out to number 44, Donnie Anderson, who punched it in to give the Cardinals a 31-13 lead. It was not going to be that easy for the visitors, however, because Dan Pastorini and Mike Montgomery were teaming up for large tracts of St. Louis real estate. In 5 plays, the Oilers traversed 65 yards, and it suddenly was getting serious at 31-20. On the following series, the Cardinals' offense was manhandled on 3 downs and forced to turn over the football. Pastorini, throwing on every down, moved his team steadily toward the Cardinal goal. Once again, Mike Montgomery made the important catch, but it was to be his last as he suffered torn ligaments on the play. An interference call brought the ball to the 1, where number 12, George Amundsen, scored his second touchdown of the day to tighten it up to 31-27 with 4.5 minutes to play. A Houston upset was in the making, and its threat was obvious to the St. Louis bench. But all fears were erased when number 21, Terry Metcalf, worked his magic on the Oilers' kickoff. His 61-yard return gave the Cardinals field position and a reprieve for victory number 6. Number 7, Dan Pastorini, did have one final but futile series to rekindle his hopes for victory, but 90 yards, 8 pass defenders, and 31 seconds said no way to the gutsy quarterback, whose 354-yard passing performance almost turned back the amazingly undefeated St. Louis Cardinals.
While the Cardinals continue to burn through the NFL, they may begin to feel the heat when they face those Redskins this week, Pat.
And those Redskins are ready, Tom, with their matchless defense playing flawlessly, and with Sonny Jurgensen superb at the helm. Washington geared up for the Cardinals by drubbing the New York Giants last Sunday.
In autumn, the focus shifts from politics to football in the nation's capital. And like a long-term senator, number 37 Pat Fisher has mellowed little during his 14 years in the NFL. Led by Fisher, the seasoned Burgundy defense so frustrated the Giants that New York resorted to arcane tricks last seen at LSU during the heyday of the Chinese Bandits. The quick kick play placed an unhealthy burden on the Giants' defense, but led by number 64, nose guard John Mendenhall, New York rocked Redskin blockers back on their heels. Quarterback Sonny Jurgensen felt the Giants' wrath, and so did his slick and sleek core of receivers. In fact, the hitting was so robust that Washington lost blocking back Larry Smith, number 38, for the year when he broke his leg. Trailing 3-0, the Redskins special teams keyed victory when Mike Hull blocked Dave Jennings' punt. Sonny burned the Giants with a sideline laser to Roy Jefferson, and Washington led 7-3. Jurgensen consistently exploited the extremities of the Giants' zone defense. New York couldn't cope with the deep square outs of Charlie Taylor on the left or the quick flares of Larry Brown on the right. Brown's touchdown gave Washington a 14-3 pad and the opportunity to test Moses Denson, who will assume Larry Smith's duties as the caddy for the indomitable Larry Brown. Denson proved he had the feet, but his hands were still in question when he turned a routine catch into a crowd-pleasing touchdown. Denson's score nailed the lid on a 24-3 Redskin victory. And for George Allen and the rest of his ice cream men, it brought on smiles as big as a double-dip pistachio.
The Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles have reversed roles this season, with Philadelphia winning and Dallas suddenly losing. But regardless of their records, when Cowboy faces Eagle, feathers really fly.
When the Eagles and Cowboys stopped trading punches long enough to trade scores, they used vastly different approaches. 2 Dallas touchdowns in the first half were the direct result of ground power. Calvin Hill first scored from the 5, then the 17-yard line, and racked up over 100 yards rushing in the first half alone. The Eagles used Roman Gabriel and the Fire High Gang to score their 2 first-half touchdowns. First, Harold Carmichael scored from 14 yards out, the play ending in more good-natured jostling. Philadelphia's second score was also set up by the pass, this time with short tosses and the tough running of Po James. And as usual for this game, after the play, the action began again. James eventually dove in from the 1 and then set up a field goal with more gut running, as the Eagles led at the half 17-14. In round 2, the second half, Po James was brought back to earth with 2 super sticks on kickoff returns. First, Ken Hutcherson knocked James out of the game for a series, and the Eagles were unable to move. When the Cowboys took over, they moved to the game-tying field goal, and Efren Herrera hooked another one to Po James. This time, Billy Joe Dupree pureed Poe, but he and the Eagle offense recovered when Gabriel pumped once and then struck streaking Don Zimmerman on a 64-yard score and a 24-17 lead. When the Eagle defense held, it appeared Philadelphia had control of the game, but Marion Reeves had the ball poked free by number 30 Charles Young, and Dave Edwards recovered for the Cowboys, the first turnover claimed in 3 games by Dallas. From there, Roger Staubach used the old pump fake and hit Dupree for 34 yards of the Eagle 2. One play later, Hill scored his 3rd touchdown, tying the game at 24. And though the first 3 quarters had seen 48 points, the 4th saw just 1 touchdown. It belonged to Roger Staubach and won the game for Dallas 31-24, knocking the Eagles 2 games behind the Cardinals in the NFC East.
Last Sunday, there was a rematch from Super Bowl III as the Baltimore Colts invaded Shea Stadium to battle Joe Namath and the New York Jets, Tom.
Right, Pat, but things have changed since then, and in '74, both clubs are, to say the least, somewhat less than Super Bowl contenders.
Though neither team possesses the power it once did, both showed the ability to produce an occasional big play. New York's only big play resulted when Steve Tannen blocked a Baltimore punt, which number 22 Burgess Owens juggled back into the end zone before finally recovering for the Jets' first score. Defensively, the Jets are a young, aggressive ball club, though perhaps a little too aggressive at times and mostly at the wrong time. While the Jet defenders too often worked against themselves, their offense could manage only some late 4th quarter passing by Joe Namath. Riding Namath's accurate arm, the Jets moved in for 2 final period touchdowns, one of which was a close call to number 82, David Knight. But for the New York Jets, late game heroics weren't going to be enough, as by the 4th quarter, the Colts had the contest won. With big plays like this 54-yard kickoff return by number 84, Tim Berra, the son of New York Met manager Yogi Berra, Baltimore moved in for win number 1 of the season. Berra's sprint eventually led to a short dive by Joe Orduña for 1 Colt touchdown. But the big offensive punch was provided by number 26, Lydell Mitchell, who packed the ball an NFL record 40 times to break O.J. Simpson's mark of 39 carries. Mitchell's longest gain was only 12 yards, but over the 40 trips, he ground out 156 yards. Later, he added another Colt touchdown. With Mitchell providing the ground thrust, Burt Jones passed less, and Colt fans enjoyed it more. Burt the Rifle fired one touchdown pass to number 28, Cotton Spire, and kept the New York defense off balance all afternoon by using some quick feet rather than a quick release. On a quarterback draw, the former LSU star showed good balance and hustled in for a Colt six-pointer. For the final Colt touchdown, Burt Jones pulled off a nifty keeper for 33 yards and the 5th Baltimore touchdown of the day. Baltimore won 35-20, but there will be little time for jubilation as the next Colt opponent will be the Miami Dolphins.
Last week, in honor of the ending of the World Series, the Chiefs and Dolphins tried to make the hardball season just one game longer by turning in a very baseball-like score of 9-3.
The Chiefs opened up with some early punch in Miami last week as Woody Green, number 27, showed up healthy and fast. The rookie from Arizona State also showed enough moves to give the Kansas City offense the perk it has needed this year. So how many points did the Chiefs roll up? 3. Meanwhile, the Dolphins themselves were unexciting as they unabashedly stayed on the ground and were virtually unscoring, garnering a mere 2 points throughout 3 periods. When Bob Greasy did try the sky route, he was shot down 3 times by the likes of number 20, Mike Sensabaugh. And then there were times when not only couldn't Greasy find a receiver, but he even had trouble finding a place to lay down. Miami's 2 points came on a blocked punt that trickled out of the end zone. It was one of the few good plays pulled off by the Dolphins, who have either lost their greatness or have placed a strict ration on it, because each week they look a little less like the powerful world champions of yesteryear. Finally, they did come up with a big play on a Greasy to number 89 Nat Moore strike that appeared 6-point bound. But alas, Moore had stepped out of bounds, and the score remained at 3-2 until the last 21 seconds when Larry Zonka powered in to eke out a 9-3 Dolphin victory. And if a loss can be a moral victory in some cases, then Miami's victory could be considered a moral loss.
Before last week, there was one undefeated team left in the AFC, Pat. That was the Cinderella Patriots of Chuck Fairbanks. They had 5 straight.
And last week, the Patriots traveled to Buffalo to renew their rivalry with the Bills, a team they hadn't beaten in their last 5 tries.
When the Patriots and Bills get together these days, it's a meeting between 2 of the NFL's finest young quarterbacks, Jim Plunkett and the NFL's current passing leader, Joe Ferguson. While passing is their specialty, they can also call on 2 of the league's most explosive runners, record breaker and again league-leading O.J. Simpson, and on a different level, number 42, league-leading kick returner Mac Herron. But it was another runner who got the game off with a bang, Sam Cunningham, number 39. On the game's first play from scrimmage, Sam Cunningham went 75 yards. And after just 21 seconds of play, the Red Hot Patriots led 7-0. On Buffalo's first possession, Joe Ferguson concluded an excellent drive with a game-tying third down pass to tight end Paul Seymour, number 87. On Buffalo's next possession, Ferguson passed through the snowflakes, this time to O.J. Simpson, who found the end zone for the first time this season. O.J. not only recorded his first touchdown of the year, but his first pass-receiving touchdown since the rookie year 1969. On New England's next series, behind good blocking by his young offensive lineman, like number 70 Leon Gray, Jim Plunkett tried to pass upfield to tight end Bob Windsor, but the ball passed just over his outstretched hand into the waiting arms of safety man Tony Green, number 43. Green's return to the New England 4 set up another Buffalo touchdown. And after one quarter, the Bills led 20-7. But then the Patriots got tough. Capping a drive which contained 6 first downs, Jim Plunkett pitched out to Sam Cunningham, whose straight arm helped him to another touchdown. Sam the Band, the AFC's leading scorer, led all ball carriers with 125 yards and 3 touchdowns. But Joe Ferguson brought the Bills right back with another big play to Paul Seymour. At the half, Buffalo led 27-14, and it stayed that way only until Spike Jones had to punt to Mac Herron, probably the mightiest mini-back since the heyday of Buddy Young. Herron's 48-yard return led to a touchdown, which closed the gap to 27-21. But in the fourth quarter, Joe Ferguson was knocking on the door again. This touchdown was disallowed, but a field goal gave the Bills a 9-point lead. New England scored again with 5 seconds left for a final score, 30-28. But this was a day for the lofty Patriots to fall. And as Chuck Fairbanks observed afterward, quote, "That blue-shirted outfit is one of the best teams in pro football." Before last Sunday, the New Orleans Saints had posted but one victory, and that came at the expense of the Atlanta Falcons, Pat.
True enough, Tom, but the Birds from Atlanta had only 2 victories, and inconsistency at quarterback didn't help them gain another.
Atlanta head coach Norm Van Brocklin appeared to be in top-flight passing form last Sunday, but unfortunately, the same cannot be said about his own Falcon quarterbacks. Atlanta quarterbacks fired 2 interceptions into the Saints secondary while throwing from a pass pocket that was somewhat less than safe. Atlanta's biggest gain of the day came when New Orleans punted the ball to number 41, Al Dodd. The 7-year veteran rambled upfield for 30 yards before being tackled, but not stopped. Well, at least not stopped in his own mind anyway. Oh, well, it doesn't hurt to try. The Falcons then tried a new quarterback in number 7, Pat Sullivan. Passing-wise, Sullivan fared somewhat better, but like his predecessor, Bob Lee was soon buried beneath a wave of white. The Falcons managed only 3 points, while the Saints marched in for 2 field goals behind a shifty running attack. "5'5" Howard Stevens provided some excitement, while quarterback Bobby Scott, number 12, who replaced an injured Archie Manning, passed for the rest. Tight end Paul Seal, number 84, the Saints' second draft choice, scored the game's only touchdown as New Orleans hung on for a 13-3 win over Atlanta.
Last week in wonderfully wacky Los Angeles, Tom, the 49ers and the Rams converged before a star-studded crowd on a sun-drenched day.
Right you are, Pat. The 49ers are a team in search of consistent quarterbacking, and their problem is such that perhaps only a wizard could solve it.
In the land of Oz, also known as Los Angeles, the 49ers traveled the yellow brick road. But despite the fact that Dorothy's daughter and her husband, the Tin-Man son, were among the onlookers, the Niners could find no wizard to guide them last week. The San Franciscans went over the rainbow only twice. The first time was on a Tom Owen to Terry Beasley connection that came when the game was virtually out of reach. Beasley's exuberance is probably due to the fact that a shutout had been averted. Second-string first-year man Tom Owen's other scoring toss was to number 40, Wilbur Jackson, who was also a first-year man. Unfortunately for the 49ers, 2 touchdowns were not enough to compete with the effectiveness of 2 of the Rams' strongest elements. First was the Los Angeles defense led by number 42, Dave Elmendorf, who stole 1 pass and sped 52 yards to give the Rams a 7-0 lead. Then came new starting quarterback James Harris, who exploded with dazzling effectiveness. He hit number 30, Lawrence McCutcheon, on a 50-yard catch and sprint to make it 14-0. Then, only moments later, he lobbed a 13-yarder to McCutcheon, and the game was virtually decided. A repeat of that last play shows that not only is Harris accomplished at the play-action fake, but can also deliver a soft pass when it's called for. And then there's another facet to his game. He's not afraid to take the money and run, which he did to boost the Los Angeles lead to 27-0. Then came the 49ers' 2 scores, and then came Jimmy Harris once again. This time he unloaded a long bomb to Harold Jackson to set up a short headstand and a short Ram field goal. Finally, Harris capped his debut with another toss and sprint to Swift Harold to make the final Los Angeles 37, San Francisco 14. Jimmy Harris, 12 for 15, 276 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interception. And now with the Rams pulling away in the standings, the 49ers find themselves very much with their backs to the wall.
In Pittsburgh, the fires of summer that were stoked by Joe Gilliam's red-hot right arm have cooled, but even though the Steeler offense is kindled only by embers, their steel curtain defense remains resolute.
At Three Rivers Stadium, Pittsburgh defensive end Dwight White told an official that he thought more holding penalties should be called. Unfortunately for the Cleveland Browns, they needed billy clubs or cattle prods, not hands, to fend off the black and gold rush. The Steelers earned the first break when Hugh McInnes fumbled after a hard hit by Glenn Edwards. Edwards, number 27, trailed the play alertly and recovered teammate Mike Wagner's air ball. While the lightning strike has been absent from the Steeler attack recently, they can still rely on the sporadic brilliance of Franco Harris. Pittsburgh built a 14-0 lead on touchdowns by Harris and running mate Preston Pearson, number 26. But Cleveland hung tough and weathered the storm on the wheels of mini scooter Greg Pruitt. Always an adept improviser, quarterback Mike Phipps was forced to wing it in on the run against the rampaging Steelers. A Phipps bomb connection was a rarity, but his scrambling was not, as he ran the Browns back into the game. Cleveland drew to within a missed extra point at 14-13 when Phipps found Milt Morin floating free and easy. Although the Steelers bumbled along on offense, they held a 20-16 lead in the fourth quarter. Mike Phipps' last chance to produce victory produced an interception by the omnipresent Glenn Edwards. The interception was just about the death knell for Cleveland title aspirations in the AFC Central, as Pittsburgh and Cincinnati are off and front running.
Last week in Bloomington, Minnesota, the Vikings, who had won 14 consecutive games at home, were looking for their 100th victory since they joined the NFL in 1961, Pat.
And Minnesota's opponent was the Detroit Lions, who were playing their 500th NFL game since they began playing in Detroit in 1934. But more significantly was the fact that the Lions had lost to the Vikings the last 13 times they had played them.
Any team you've beaten 13 straight times is bound to be welcome, but the Lions weren't welcome for long. Larry Walton made it to the one, and typically Detroit fumbled on the next play. But this time it only made the Lions mad enough to come back harder. Altie Taylor's return to the lineup helped, as did a 22-for-32 passing day by Bill Munson. Ron Jesse caught 10 passes, and even the one he dropped in the end zone didn't kill the Lions, who led 6-3 at the half. But early in the third quarter, Fran Tarkenton, the NFC's leading passer, found his second-year wide receiver Jim Lash for a long gainer to the Detroit 2-yard line. From there, the Vikings scored their first touchdown, and on their next possession, they scored again when Fran Tarkenton scrambled to his left and let fly for Chuck Foreman, whose 10th touchdown of the season made him a runaway leader as the NFL's top scorer. Unlike the previous 13 games between these teams, in this one, the Lions kept roaring back. Altie Taylor's fourth quarter touchdown gave Detroit the lead at 20-16, and then the Lions defense took over the game. Number 80, Herb Orvis, came up with one important play, but perhaps the game's biggest defensive play occurred with just 16 seconds to play, when Fran Tarkenton went all out for the game winner. Sly old Lem Barney played the ball perfectly and saved the day for the Lions, a day he had not seen for a long time. After 13 consecutive embarrassments, Detroit had finally beaten Minnesota. And as Lion coach Rick Forzano said afterward, quote, "We're striving for 10-4 now. Tell Green Bay and those other people we're going after them."
The Chargers were in Denver, Colorado last Sunday, where they quickly found out that John Ralston had his Broncos all fired up to squash any thoughts of a San Diego upset.
The Chargers had been averaging over 350 yards of offense per game, but the Broncos never even allowed them to get started last Sunday. At the end of the first half, the demoralized San Diegans had amassed an offensive total of 50 yards. For number 14, Dan Fouts, it was a day nothing could go right even when his end of the business was right on. Number 36, Bill Thompson, took Wayne Stewart's bobble for the first of 2 interceptions he would have for the afternoon. It's actually hard to find fault with Fouts, as his second interception once again bounced out of a receiver's hands into Mr. Thompson's obviously more receptive grasp. It was a fine all-around performance by the Denver Team D as they held the Chargers to 84 yards on the rushing ledger. While the San Diego offense sputtered, the Denver offense rolled behind the inspiring runs of number 44, Floyd Little. With Little free of ankle problems and number 12, Charlie Johnson, recovered from nagging injuries, the Broncos moved 80 yards on their first possession. At the 5, Dr. Johnson eased a pass to number 88, tight end Riley Odoms, who scored, made it 7-0 Broncos. In the second quarter, the Broncos added a little more complexity to their attack when Charlie Johnson flipped a lateral pass to Billy Van Heusen, who in turn passed to Riley Odoms for a 41-yard pickup. On the 6-yard line, Floyd Little took an inside counter for a 14-0 Denver advantage. But Floyd's biggest thrill of the day came on a simple swing pass. Number 40, Joe Beauchamp, missed the tackle, and number 44 had himself a foot race. At 32 years of age, Floyd may have lost a step or so, but he still squeezed 72 yards out of that little bitty swing pass. From the 10-yard line, Charlie Johnson handed off to number 24, Otis Armstrong, who slipped through a knot of tacklers into the San Diego end zone en route to a 27-7 Denver victory.
The Oakland Raiders are a team which has long referred to its playing style as one of pride and poise, Tom. It's a catchy phrase that sometimes elicits a sarcastic response from the opposition.
Well, that's true, Pat, but I don't think you'll ever catch the Cincinnati Bengals snickering or being facetious about the Raiders' pride and poise. Because last week, the Bengals got a first-hand look at a cool snake in a real barn burner.
Playing at home, where they're seldom losers, the Raiders jumped off to an early 3-point lead, but Ken Anderson and the Bengals roared right back on the next series. This play was good for 60 yards to wide receiver number 86, John McDaniel. And then number 44, Doug Dressler, popped it in from the 1. Cincinnati continued to move the ball well, but each game drew the penalty of pain as the Raiders unloaded a volley of good shots. However, pain was no deterrent to the hungry Bengals, and once again they moved in on a struggling 3-yarder by number 42, Boobie Clark, to lead 14-3. Throughout the first half, Raider quarterback Ken Stabler found his team plagued by the Cincinnati rush, an inordinate number of penalties, and a few crucial turnovers. They therefore trailed 14-6 at the break. In the second half, the Silver and Black stormed back as number 40, Pete Banaszak, charged in for 6, following Marv Hubbard's 2-yarder, and Oakland led 20-14. But it was 2 teams for the seesaw when Anderson rolled out and hit number 84, Bob Trumpy. to forge a new Bengal lead at 21-20. Then the Raiders led at 23-21 on a George Blanda field goal. But again, the Tiger was on the prowl. A 50-yard bombing run to number 85, Isaac Curtis, set up another Doug Dressler short sweep. With their lead at 27-23, the field goal was now useless to Oakland, and time at a premium. The Cincinnati Cats were in good shape. But then came the snake, and Kenny Stabler hissed passes while the clock ticked away. First to Fred Biletnikoff. First down. With icy calm, the snake struck. First down again. Stabler's coolness was all the more improbable because the silver and black had no timeouts left and no time to huddle. So Stabler had to call the plays to both sides of the field from the line of scrimmage as the clock ticked inexorably down. Relentlessly, Stabler drove his team to 3 straight first downs, going mainly to tight end Bob Moore, number 88. With only 39 seconds left, Stabler rifled a 13-yard shot to Mike Ciani, and the Raiders were on the Bengal 1-yard line. "13 seconds. Do or die, heroes or losers." And the Raider offensive line strung out enough daylight to sweep number 23, Charlie Smith, into the end zone for a thrilling 30-27 victory, born of Raider pride and executed with unflappable Raider poise.
Well, I had a good streak going. I've got you a little bit. I've got you on the percentage on picks.
You got me a lot. You're 14-10, and I'm 11-13.
All right, I'll give you the first choice in Dallas at New York.
Thanks a lot. I got to take Dallas.
I've got to go with the Cowboys, too. They're rough again.
Figured you might.
Denver at Cleveland.
I think an upset might be due here. The Browns are due to win. I'm going to go with Cleveland.
I'll stick with the Denver Broncos.
Okay, how about Green Bay at Detroit? What do you think?
Well, that may be a 3-3 tie, right? I think the Packers will bounce back and win that one.
Detroit played very well last week in upsetting Minnesota. I'll go with the Lions, happily.
Okay, now the big one, Washington at St. Louis.
Cardinals have won 6 straight. Washington 4-2. They have to win. What do you think?
I think if Jurgensen plays for the Redskins, they'll win. They'll win the big game.
Well, he started the last 2 weeks. I think he probably will play. I'll go with Washington, too. New England at Minnesota.
I'm going to go with the Vikings that sort of bounce back. I'm not so sure they really thought they lost to Detroit. I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings.
All right, I like Minnesota, too. At any rate, we'll be back next week to show you highlights of all those games and whatever happens in the NFL. I'm Pat Summerall.
I'm Tom Brookshire. We'll see you next week.